awesome beverages and things like that. So we're gonna have readings by some of our authors. So these are all going to be pieces that are published in Hothouse this year. And there's free copies over there if anyone didn't already grab some. But yeah, thank you so much. We're really proud of our authors and we're proud of the work we did, and we really appreciate everyone coming out to celebrate with us. So our first reader is going to be Barry Maxwell, and he's reading his piece Leftovers.
Hi everybody, thank you for the whole deal. The Hothouse experience is a surprise. This is my first year at UT. I'd never heard of it until suddenly the emails start coming in and boom, here I am. I'm going to read Leftovers. It's a short piece in the nonfiction section. She asks, "What's for dinner?" And I've got nothing planned, but I'm happy to oblige. "Let me see what I can fix for you," I say, and I trot to the kitchen. I make do with what I've got at hand, aiming for bittersweet, forcing the biting and the bland to cooperate. A two-handed heap of kale wilts from the size of a pillow to a simmering panful, bubbling and briny and dark as seaweed, and baby carrots steam over a bright ginger infusion. I watch patiently as rice swells in a glass pot, and I peek at the chicken in the oven, skin crackling to peppery brown. The meal comes together in spite of the dissonant color scheme, orange, green, russet, and white, all done on cue and waiting for plates. I call to her in the bedroom, "It's dinner." She prances into the kitchen barefoot, and I offer silverware, and she shakes her head. She munches a dripping dill pickle from the jar and says, "Oh, no thanks. I'm not hungry anymore. Looks good though." My belly grumbles as I load a plate with more than I want, and I swallow my anger for an appetizer. I keep my mouth shut and seal my resentment in plastic wrapped mess, the sour odor. I sit cross-legged at my desk and eat while I scribble notes on revisions. I delete half-hearted drafts and tap the back key between bites until my plate is as clean as the sentence I'm cutting. There's nothing left but juice. "So there," I mumble. The Big Bang theme song rings from the bedroom. She coughs on a hit and laughs at those crazy science kids. I set to putting away the leftovers, nibbling savory bits, pinching slippery bites of dark meat from the bottom of the pot. The peppercorn cracks like fireworks in my mouth. My lips buzz from the pippin. I grab the chicken barehanded and swing it whole from pot to container. Not a drop of broth splatters my clean counter. Carrots and greens I tuck into recycled snap-top tubs, the buttery pot liquor lukewarm and clotting. I tamp clumps of white rice solid into a clear plastic brick. The wooden serving spoon hangs onto a tempting mouthful, and I work it into my mouth like a mannerless street boy. My teeth scrape a neat road hatch across the grain, and I lean against the sink and chew the rice with bulging cheeks. I can't tolerate wasting food. It's pathological, needy, as though every meal might be the last. The undersized fridge is crowded with unfinished dinners, and I slide the milk to the right, roll the cabbage to the back for space. I stow the leftovers like a well-packed moving van, and the load organizes itself until the refrigerator is as full as a suitcase waiting by the door. The next night, I stack containers on the counter and take inventory. Some are too old to trust. They still look edible, but the window of opportunity is closed, and I reluctantly scrape them into the trash. If I could fold myself into a container and snap the top shut over me, or settle with the rest to the bottom of the trash can, I would, if only to call it to an end. A meal can be made of what remains. Not a good one, but a meal. I spoon up careless portions in a mismatched palette, a dry twist of chicken breast, a muddy assemblage of limp vegetables, aimless trails of liquid pool in the center of the chipped stoneware. I put the plates in the oven to warm. I want to throw them cold into the garbage with the rest, leave the mess for someone else to deal with, and walk out for a solitary bite. I want to run my fingers down the menu, taste the entrees through the ink, dine in the booth by the window and flirt with the waitress while I linger over coffee. "What's for dinner?" she calls from the bedroom. I've lost my appetite, and the smell of the reheated food repulses me, but I haven't got the energy to make anything fresh of the night or less apathetic. "Nothing," I say quietly when she asks again. "Leftovers." Thank you.
Hi, I'm Laura Marshall, and I'll be reading an excerpt from my story, Relic. Devin finishes with the photographs, and I trail behind him, acting like I'm also finished. Don't seem too eager. I line those words up in my head. Don't seem too eager. I chant that to myself often. The powers that be will know exactly what to take away if you show them. Devin ignores the fact that I'm crazy, and instead focuses on the fact that I'm pretty. Someday, one will conquer, but I can't wait to watch the facts fight in his eyes in just a minute as I reach out past the ropes and lay my hands on the lovingly preserved remains of Mark Twain. I shiver as we approach the room where Mark Twain's sarcophagus is on display, and I run my hands over the bumps on my arms. The room is fittingly crypt-like, with only a few fastidiously arranged lights over the sarcophagus. A security guard with a walkie-talkie on his tool belt stands in the corner. I'm beginning to realize that this might be a more difficult undertaking than I had imagined. They'd given Twain a formidable alabaster sarcophagus. He would have hated it. The museum lights cast an ethereal glow around it. Devin looks at me, and I can tell he's impatient, so we move closer and we peer over the casket. There are no ropes, just a plastic guard like at a salad bar, only a few inches high and easy enough to get around. They've dressed him in one of his characteristic white suits. His hair and his downy walrus mustache have been combed, and on his resting face you can catch the corners of a scowl. Even now, he looks authoritative and respectable, like an uncle you admire, but are wary of getting too close to for fear of another of his practical jokes, like when you replace the water in your glass with vodka. I whisper to Devin that this is one of the top 3, if not the best, of the corpses I've ever seen. Devin laughs politely enough and then turns to me to ask, wait, how many corpses have you seen? I'm eyeing the security guard, wishing he'd walk away. Neither of us can think of anything better to say, so we just stare. I notice Mark Twain's hands placed customarily to the sides on the red velvet pillow. A little shiny, a little off in color, but natural enough. I trace the journey my hand will make to his right pinky finger. This is no impulse. I have to calculate and plan my motions, since I will likely not be given another chance. Suddenly, the security guard's walkie-talkie buzzes. He responds to the garbled voice and steps out of the arch into the gift shop. I pounce. It's intentionally awkward to get over the sneeze guard, but I manage. Devin looks incredulous, but to my surprise, he too throws his arm over the plastic gate, which gives me a terrible thought. If Devin becomes successful before me, I don't know what I'll do. And he probably will, because he certainly beats me in work ethic. I've read his writing. Devin's got something that my jealous mind wants to think is universal appeal. It's not original, but he's good, and I can't let him touch the finger because what if it's really magic and it works? He's good, so I slap him out of the way. Devin doesn't take kindly to the slap, and we reach the finger at the same time with a renewed vigor. Was he planning this the whole time too? I'd like to believe that he's only following me, trying to impress me with his carefree, fun-loving attitude, but there's the slim chance that he knows perfectly well what he's doing. This worries me, so I wrap my hand more tightly around the pinky finger attached to Mark Twain's corpse. It's exactly as you'd imagine it to feel, stiff, cold, and waxy. Now I have the top half and really most of it. He has the part that attaches to the hand. Of course, I won't be satisfied until I've eliminated the Devin threat for good. With a quick, violent jerk, I throw his hand off. Unfortunately, in doing this, I've moved the finger, probably more than it's been moved in years. After that jerk, I hear a small snap. Fuck, fuck, fuck! I've broken Mark Twain's pinky finger. A soul sinewy strand holds it, and when I try to arrange it back on the pillow, it pops off for good. Devin's bloodless face does the rest of the cursing for me. Quickly, I reach my hand and the now detached finger out of the sarcophagus, banging it on the sneeze guard on the way out. The security guard hears the bang and bursts his head back into the room. Luckily, he doesn't see me slipping the finger into the pocket of my dress. My ears are ringing from the knock on the plastic. A sneeze guard. That's a hilarious abomination. I now hold in my pocket the embalmed, currently disembodied, pinky finger of one of America's most treasured communicators, but the museum put a plexiglass wall in place because God forbid some snotty, cold-suffering tourist spots the author of Huckleberry Finn with a spray of mucus. America has no idea how to display its dead. Thank you. I realize y'all should have read the beginning of that for that to make sense, but it's in there.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Werth, and this is my story, Livre de Mars. Sebastian has a tiny apartment in Paris, something that he bought when he was still a struggling pilot, but managed to scrounge up just enough money to find somewhere to live. It's quiet and quaint, something very lived in. The walls, once painted white in a bygone time, have started to yellow with age. The furniture was collected slowly over time, a piece here and a piece there from thrift shops whenever Sebastian had the money. It's nothing cohesive, though he had tried to buy based on how well the furniture stuck to a general style and color scheme. It's all right that it doesn't match, though. It gives the place a homey look, and Sebastian has his own room in Jamie's manor back in Scotland, decorated in the extravagant style he could never attain here to compensate. It's March, early in the morning, and Sebastian wakes up to the sound of the wind. The apartment is old and in a state of slight disrepair no matter how much he tries to mend it. Right now, the culprit is currently the poorly sealed window that has been letting in cold air all winter. The wind is howling through the cracks and causing the vent connected to the stove to clank every so often. He should be used to it by now, really, but it still manages to rouse him from his sleep at an awful hour of the morning when the light from the window is still a hazy shade of gray and the bustle of the city below hasn't even started. They had had 3 days of spring where the sun had peeked out from behind the clouds and warmed the earth and sent the trees off to start budding. It was the slightest little sliver of a better season, and then they were thrown headfirst back into a bitter winter with nothing but the taste of what will lie beyond, a taste of summer, that everyone swallowed readily only to choke on it and have to spit it back out after those beautiful 3 days. The only thing that can console the Frenchman is that there's warmth in his bed, a kind of incredible warmth that can only come from another person. Jamie had come over to keep Sebastian company after he called up the Scot and asked him to come see the gorgeous Parisian spring. They had had 2 days of traipsing about the city before the icy winds returned and made the leaving the house utterly undesirable. Which is okay, really, because Jamie is here for another 4 days, and Sebastian is just as happy to spend those 4 days nestled under the covers with the man, as long as it means he doesn't have to brave the disappointment of the second round of winter alone. With a soft little sigh, Sebastian, tired of investigating what it was that was waking him, drops his head back down into the pillow and nestles closer to Jamie. Though he's still asleep, the Scot almost instinctively tightens his arm around Sebastian's waist and presses his forehead against the back of Sebastian's neck. The bed isn't very big, so it warrants a lot of snuggling, for which Sebastian is eternally grateful. The action puts a little smile on his face, and he laces his fingers with Jamie's as best he can. On mornings like this, Sebastian is used to waking up alone, the cold air having seeped under the quilt that his mother made for him years ago and chilling him to the bone. Now he doesn't have to worry about that. Even though Jamie is an early riser, he'll stay in bed holding Sebastian until the latter man wakes up when they're in Paris together. It's something about the romance of the city, the Scot had explained once. He's swept up by it, and it inspires a lot of late mornings. In a few hours, they'll have to brave the wind buffeting through the streets to pick up a few things to make dinner. They don't even have enough supplies for breakfast, which means they'll stop at the little corner cafe on the way for something warm. It'll make it difficult to go back outside, where the persistent wind will unwind their scarves that they'll carefully wrap around one another before they leave and will numb their toes. It'll put Sebastian's cigarettes out, and when he gives up in favor of holding Jamie's hand, it'll have made his fingers ice cold in sharp contrast to how warm Jamie's will be from the pocket of his coat. The kisses they'll sneak every so often will taste like ice, but they won't have the luxury of kissing the winter from one another's lips. They probably shouldn't even kiss in the first place, but that doesn't mean that they won't. And then, with armfuls of groceries that will hold them over for the next few days, they'll run back to the quaint apartment with the yellowing walls and tiny bed and mismatched furniture and poorly sealed window panes, and it'll feel like the only home they'll ever need. For as much as he aches for warmth, and for as much as he yearns to spend the rest of his 4 days with Jamie in bed, Sebastian thinks that he almost doesn't mind having to brave the return of winter, as long as it means that he gets to have Jamie to brave it with him.
I guess I'm next. My name's Otto Rennick, and I'm going to read my poem, Next Appointment. Since your hands are in my mouth, now's I guess the perfect time to tell you, at the risk of stumbling into a patch of dandelions, coming up starry-eyed, laughing, coughing up nettle-coated tonsils, you say, open wider, and you pluck at the plaque. You know I haven't been flossing. Plaque on your wall, flipped it over, said, Made in China. Really everything a plaque to place upon the walls, the halls of your mouth? Maybe she was. And I know her teeth have plaque. She told me when I thought I could be a cheap Scrood or a cheap Merlot. But due to recurring dreams of pushing her into a wine rack and ravishing her until radish blood leaks out vermilion wine veins, bottles soar, shards proliferate, rising up, eating glass like candy, laughing, molars ripped, left for her on the... Oh, you're done. Move the light. Hey, thanks, You're so worth the 125. You're like the lady that asks me, on a scale of 1 to 5, except with you it's just cherry or everlasting, flavor blasting, very berry. Unrecline with nitrous eyes. I hear the motorcycle she stole drive by, but I know it's time to go. At the desk, the lady asks when I'd like to schedule my next appointment. Thanks.
Hi everyone. I'm going to be reading an excerpt from my story Legal Pad. A little context. I actually recommend you follow, you read along as I read because it's in the form of a pros and cons list. So it really, it's kind of got to be on the page. Left column pros, right column cons. And I'm starting at the top of page 69 of the right column. Right column. You are not the writer you thought you'd be. Now that one hurts. It's a very specific memory I have from when I was 19, a sick fuck at the time, in the van careening towards Akron. I was resting my head on a Marshall cab and my feet on a bass drum, reading a novel. In the interest of propriety, I'll refrain from divulging the title and author. And I remember being furious. I exclaimed to the drummer, Tom, riding shotgun, I could have written this shit. Tom naturally was too stoned to respond coherently, but I decided to figure myself as a satirist of sorts, in the vein of Heller or Vonnegut, and began mapping out a novel on what else but a legal pad. It was going to be sloppy, irreverent, and almost certainly denounced by the masses. I was ecstatic. But unfortunately, I had studied philosophy, was all there in concept, and died in implementation. There's another very specific memory I have about 6 years later, staring at the page number 36 at the bottom of my computer screen for 5 hours without typing, and eventually hurling a highball glass into the wall behind me. Jig, consummately unruffled, relocated calmly from the sofa to his bed by the bedroom door. Left column. Jig needs you. Right column. His days are numbered. 10 is ancient for a Dane, and Jig is going to hit double digits in a month. He's already a couple of years into some fairly severe hip dysplasia, and he doesn't know I'm in the room unless I'm 3 inches from his face. He was Elle's. I had begged her to let me keep him when she left. It wasn't even a matter of affection for me. I had never really been a dog person, or an animal person, or really a person. Jig was basically a big, lazy roommate who, given his inability to speak, had no choice but to listen, no matter how indifferent he seemed to be in my presence. When I'd grade a particularly miserable paper, I'd read lines out loud to him, imitating a stereotypical 1940s Frank Capra schoolboy as he studied Colbert gesticulating on the TV. Do you hear that, Jig? Pigment of his imagination. Pigment. Oh, God bless him, Jig. And Jig would just raise his brows and grunt like a horse. And now it's a whole geriatric ordeal. Jig has an extensive medicinal timetable and requires prescription brittle bones dog food and pricey orthopedic loungers. Every day his limp grows more piteous and his whimpering more frequent. I think when it hurts too much just to walk outside and take a shit, you're pretty much done. And I think Jig knows that. So now we're just waiting. Right column. You have the guarantee. I suppose nothing is ever 100%, but something about it just screams finality to me. That's why I call it the guarantee. It's been sitting in my bedroom, or behind my bathroom mirror for months now. My eyes gloss over it twice a day, still gratingly orange, still unopened between the nardole and the Listerine. It'll be there if I decide I need it, and it'd be a perfect way out for me because, left column, God knows you hate attention. Indeed, I do. There'd be no chalk outlines on sidewalks, or bullet holes in walls, or bathtubs filled with blood here. Just 2 bottles on a bedside table, Demerol and gin, both empty, no note, a one-way ticket. But then again, left going, God knows you hate cliches. And I'd be one, because the whole